All right. We are live. I hope you are all doing well. I'm just going to get a couple things situated here. Um and then we'll go ahead and get started. Den is here in the comments. He wanted me to let you know he's not able to type stuff as much tonight, but he will see your comments. I'll make sure I see them as we're going through everything. As always, you can support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And you can always subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. Go do that if you haven't already. All right. Um, let's go ahead and get started. You know what we got to start with tonight. We have to talk about Ryan Walters. And just last week, I already talked about him and how so many school districts were rejecting his social studies standards, how many textbook companies were rejecting them. Well, Ryan Walters, shortly after I made that video last week, he's back in the news for like chef's kiss, just the best reasons possible. So, in case you've been living in a hole and you don't know who Ryan Walters is, he's the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. This is the dude, if you aren't familiar with him. And he's a Christian nationalist whose entire purpose in public office is to shove Jesus in the classrooms. So you could see him right here. He's holding a Trump Bible that he tried to get into public schools. He's already rewritten the social studies standards in order to indoctrinate kids with more Christianity. And he's tried to use public money to launch a religious charter school. That thing was struck down by like the Oklahoma Supreme Court and later the US Supreme Court. But that's who Ryan Walters is. He wants you to know he's Christian and therefore everyone else has to be Christian too. And then he cloaks that by saying it's really all about teaching history, but really it's just about indoctrinating kids with his faith. But now there's one more thing we know about Ryan Walters, and that is he apparently enjoys watching adult content at work, which I know all of you suspected already, but now we kind of have some reason to believe that to be the case. And listen, you're going to ask me, why am I speaking for 3 hours about Ryan Walters? Listen, I have so little joy in my life. Let me enjoy this. You can enjoy it too. There's so much bad news in the world. We get to have this one for ourselves. So here's basically what happened. And the reason we know this, I should say, is because a website called Non Docs, as far as I can tell, they were the first ones to publish this. But what apparently happened is last week, the Oklahoma State Board of Education had their regularly scheduled meeting. This is last Thursday, the 24th in the morning. And at some point during the meeting, and mind you, this is the State Board of Education. It's a big deal. Not only are the members of the Board of Education there, you have some members of the public. It's not a huge room, but some members of the public, a lot of media outlets, reporters, and news cameras there too, because, it's the State Board of Education. It's a big deal. And at one point during that meeting, they went into executive session. And basically, what that means is there's some stuff the Board of Education has to discuss that is not for public consumption. For example, I'm totally making this part up. What if there's a parent who tried to ask a district, like, you expelled my child and you should not have done that, and I want the State Board of Education to step in? Well, they're discussing the situation, the specific case, the child's name. That's not for the public to hear. So they go into executive session. They go back to Ryan Walters' office and have a private discussion about that matter. And when they're done with it, they'll return to the public meeting. So that's what they did. They went into executive session. And at some point, when they were in the office, there were two State Board of Education members, who saw something weird. Here's the background you need to know. The two board members whose names you should be familiar with, Becky Carson and Ryan Deathridge. And both of those people were appointed by Governor Kevin Stitt, who is a Republican. Everyone we're talking about here is a Republican because it's Oklahoma and we're talking about the state government. But Kevin Stitt, the current governor, really doesn't like Ryan Walters, the wannabe governor, who, as far as I can tell, is very eager to launch his 2026 campaign to become governor because Kevin Stitt's like term limited out. And so this is everything I'm about to tell you is getting in the way of that announcement. But Stitt and Walters don't love each other right now. Somehow, Ryan Walters has just tried to usurp the power of Kevin Stitt. He's tried to undermine him. He's tried to make himself out to be like the king of all education and the guy who represents real Oklahomans and not those crazy Republicans who like actually run the state. So anyway, at some point, Stitt appointed several members of the Board of Education. Maybe they could stop Ryan Walters from doing Ryan Walters stuff. Becky Carson and Ryan Deathridge are two of those people. So they go to executive session, and I will show you the non-docs article, and we will talk about it then. Basically, those two people were the only ones at like an oval table who could see the television that, as far as I can tell, was like streamcasting from Ryan Walters' computer. Maybe they were looking at a Zoom screen. I don't know what the deal was. But let's look at this article. Here we go. Deathridge said he noticed the video first, while a parent, I assume over a Zoom call, was speaking about her appeal of a district transfer denial. As Deathridge weighed his options about how to bring the video to the room's attention, Carson noticed the nudity. I was like, what am I seeing? I kind of was in shock. Honestly, I started to question whether I was actually seeing what I was seeing, Carson said. I was like, is that woman naked? And then I was like, no, she's got a bodysuit on. And it happened very quickly. I was like, that is not a bodysuit. And I hate to even use these terms, but I said, those are her nipples. And then I was looking closer and I got a full body view. And I was like, that is pubic hair. Even right now, I couldn't even tell you what I was watching. That's interesting because I can. It's content you're not supposed to have up in the workplace, especially if you're Ryan Walters and your whole thing is, look, Bible's everywhere. So somehow they're having this Zoom call with some parent about some private, serious issue. And I wonder, my first thought was Ryan Walters was probably like streaming the Zoom or streamcasting the Zoom on the TV so everyone could see it. So we're all on the same page looking at the same thing. And maybe he was sharing a screen, but instead of sharing like the Zoom screen, he was sharing his whole laptop screen. And someone notices there's another window open and it has this adult content. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's the first thing I thought of because that to me is something that could totally happen when you think you're broadcasting one window, but you're really broadcasting your entire computer. And maybe Ryan Walters was looking at stuff before the meeting started, as one does. Listen, part of me just thinks this is kind of funny. It happens. People accidentally broadcast stuff they don't want others to see, but usually it's not like extreme adult content or anything. It's like, oh no, you caught me shopping online when I was supposed to be paying attention to the Zoom call. Anyway, let us continue with this story, shall we? As Carson processed what she was seeing, she said, the mama bear and teacher in me came out, and she stopped the meeting cold by confronting Walters. I was so disturbed by it that I was like, very loudly and boastfully, like I was a parent or a teacher, I said, what is on your TV? What am I watching? He, Ryan Walters, was like, what? What are you talking about? He stood up and saw it. This is important because you're going to hear what Ryan Walters says about this in a second, but this is in real time. He stood up and saw it. He made acknowledgement that he saw it, Carson recalled, and I said, turn it off now. And he was like, what is this? What is this? So he acknowledged it was inappropriate just by those words. And he was like, I can't get it to turn off. I can't figure out how to turn it off, but he knows how to turn it on. And I said, get it turned off. So he finally got it turned off. And that was the end of it. And then this is more damning than anything. He didn't address it. He didn't apologize. Nothing was said. We'll pause there. So instead of just saying, hey guys, whoops, I don't know how that got on there. Maybe it was a pop up on my computer somehow. He's like, let's never speak about this. Let us never discuss it again. I'm skipping down to the bottom of the article because Carson said something that I thought was just perfect. It's like a teenager when you walk in the room and they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Yeah, she stumbled in and saw something she wasn't supposed to see. And what do you do if you're that teenager? You're like, ah, mom, hide, get under the covers or whatever. So, okay, again, listen, I have talked about Ryan Walters so many times. And of all the horrible things he has done in Oklahoma, honestly, everything I just shared with you right now is so low on the list of reasons to not like Ryan Walters. But the hypocrisy of it all, the fact that it's this guy, that's the beautiful part about this. Let's see what the other dude said, because remember, everything you just heard, my special reenactment, that was Becky Carson. But let's see what that other guy had to say about all this. Deatheridge recalled seeing multiple nude women on the screen and some sort of chiropractic table. Were they giving each other a massage? I don't know what they were watching. He found Walter's reaction to the situation confounding. I don't know if he turned it off or switched the channel. I don't remember, Deathridge said. I was surprised that when he came back to the table, he was not apologetic. I didn't ever hear an apology for that being on, and he didn't seem to be fazed that it was on. Yeah, again, that's probably the most damning thing. Ryan Walters did not address it in the moment, laugh it off, apologize. Hey guys, I don't know how that got on there. Let's just deal with this right now in private, since we're already in a private session. Nope, he pretended like it never happened. You didn't see the thing you definitely saw. And by the way, I saw this comment pop up here. Oklahoma is one of the states that requires a credit card or driver's license to even access adult content. That is accurate, which means if again, it's all allegations, right? If Ryan Walters had accessed adult content and put it in a tab that he thought no one would see on his computer, he had to age verify like they have to do in a lot of red states right now, which means what are your options here? He like scanned his driver's license, he submitted some sort of age verification test, and that's one option. He was using like a VPN to get around it. That's another option. But like that sort of adult content, if you're going to an adult website in theory, and I'm sure there are many ways around it in Oklahoma, but in theory, you're not supposed to be able to do it unless you overcome a hurdle. It doesn't just accidentally come up, is the point. And I don't know, I've had plenty of pop-up ads come up on my computer. It's never like hardcore adult content. That's a choice. Okay. So basically, Ryan Walters, his screen, or at least the screen that's in the TV that's in his office, has some adult content. Not one board member saw it, two board members saw it. And by the way, there was a third board member too who was where was this guy? There was a third board member who did not see it because he did not have a line of sight to that television. But that third board member was like, yeah, I believe what my two colleagues here said, even if I didn't see it. It's not like they make up shit like this. So you basically have two people who saw it, another board member who's like, yeah, that's probably what happened, and Ryan Walters. And who are you going to believe in that situation? Okay. So very interesting. And so what was Ryan Walters' reaction? Because here's what happened. They do this Thursday morning. All of this happens. They finish up their meeting. No one says anything. And then later on, those two board members are like, we got to tell somebody about this. And they speak to the media. And Nondocs, like I said, was the first to post about it. So by Friday, the 25th, July 25th, this becomes a whole thing. And what do you think Ryan Walters said on Friday? Well, first of all, like Donald Trump, he didn't say anything. He got one of his minions to speak out against it. And what did the minion do? He was like, no, you guys are all liars. This is the liberal media doing it. Check this out. Here we go. Walter's latest director of communications, love that jab because that guy goes through them like hotcakes. Walter's latest director of communications, Quentin Hitchcock, a perfect name for the story we are describing, responded with the pointed statement Friday afternoon. What an absolute joke of a story, and this is embarrassing from you to write a junk tabloid lie, Hitchcock wrote in an email. Any number of people have access to these offices. You have a hostile board who will say and do anything except tell the truth. And now, Nonsense Doc is reporting on an alleged random TV cable image. That's just word salad right there, whatever he just said. Rock solid truth in journalism. Like my buddy, now is not the time to try to crack jokes. But basically, they're accusing the board members of like lying, coming up with some conspiracy theory for what? To destroy another Republican. And the way they do it is by waiting until the cameras are off in Ryan Walter's private office and then concocting a very specific story about what he saw on camera. Like, it doesn't even make sense as a conspiracy. So, Ryan Walters is like, shit, my minion's lie did not work. Oh no. So now this story's everywhere. Because again, Ryan Walters is the Bible dude who wants the Bible everywhere. So part of what makes this whole story really funny is that Ryan Walters has been railing against what he calls adult content in school, even though that's not a real problem. He made a video in 2023 where he called for porn-free schools. And by that, he meant we got to get rid of any books that include radical sexual material. The problem is that there are no books in school libraries that have radical sexual material. I know, he's talking about books with like gay characters or books where teenagers are exploring young love. Like, it's not porn, it's like a coming of age novel or something like that. But anyway, those books have effectively been banned, so it's not like Walters was doing research for work. And also, none of those books, as I recall, involve multiple nude women and a chiropractic table. I don't know which novel, which classic novel was that? I don't remember that scene in Catcher in the Rye. Also funny is that around that time, Republican lawmakers are like, hey, Ryan Walters, you're saying there's all this adult content in the books. Can you send us examples of what you're talking about so we can actually write laws that ban these books? And Walters, according to one article, sent them a bunch of graphic, sexually explicit photos without saying where they came from or which schools were making kids look at this stuff because they don't exist. But also, those lawmakers are like, dude, what are you sending us on our work emails? So this isn't even the first time Ryan Walters has been condemned for sharing adult content with unsuspecting government officials. So again, the bigger issue here, it's the hypocrisy of all of this, because I don't care what Ryan Walters does in his private life. I don't care what he watches in his private life. This is all beautifully funny. For the same reason it was funny when Ted Cruz liked adult content on Twitter for the whole world to see on 9/11. You can look that up. That's a thing that happened. And like, if it was some random other person, no one would care. But it's the guy who keeps talking about what a good religious guy he is. So of course this is hilarious. Ryan Walters accuses everybody else who doesn't think like him of like sexual perversion. Like, can you imagine what would happen if a teacher accidentally showed that in the classroom, what he was showing the Board of Education? What do you think he would say about that teacher? That teacher would be out of a job. That teacher would obviously be cast as some liberal, blue-haired Democrat who wants to corrupt children. But when Ryan Walters does it, it's a big lie from people who are out to get him. So by like Friday night, Ryan Walters like 36 hours later, he's doing damage control. He releases a statement to the media. This time it's not a lackey, it's just him. Look at this. Some of these board members are blatantly dishonest and cannot hide their political agenda. I just want to repeat, those two board members are Republican. It is disappointing that they are more interested in creating distractions than getting work done for Oklahoma families. This is how you know he's so guilty, because that's not what you say when absolutely nothing happened. They're more interested in creating distractions. The entire board did not come up with this. Two people did not come up with the story that weirdly specific. It was funny trying to watch these two older, I don't know how old they are, but older Board of Education members try to explain to the media what they were looking at. And I already told you what they said they saw, but they were like, it looked like it was from Gilligan's Island, like it was from the 70s because of the way the camera looked. Like they don't know what they're looking at. It's not just like adult content. It's very specific genre of adult content. And these old guys are like, I don't know what that is, but it looks unusual. So for now, and there is more to come, what has happened since then is Ryan Walters is like, look, you guys, do an investigation of me. And Republicans in leadership in the legislature are like, all right, fine, I guess we'll do an investigation. So they had I think, Oklahoma County Sheriff. They also had the Office of Management and Enterprise Services do an investigation of his computer and the situation in that chamber of his where the TV was connected. And I'm going to play for you what Ryan Walters said shortly after all this happened. Let me see if I could get this. Ryan Walters does a press conference then, because this story doesn't go away. And the audio isn't great on this, but let me play for you a little bit of the press conference Ryan Walters then did, where he's just mad at the whole world.
What we've seen transpire over the last 5 days is the nastiest, biggest lie ever lodged at an official in Oklahoma. I cannot begin to describe the disgusting nature of the lies leveled against me by board members, by the media, and by the teachers union. This has been a coordinated attack to crucify my character and to try to stop the will of Oklahomans and their vision for education in the state of Oklahoma. For the past 5 days, my kids have got to see headlines that are lies. For the last 5 days, my family has watched as a press corps showed why the public has zero trust in their reporting. My family has watched as board members stopped at nothing to stop education reform in the state of Oklahoma. These board members have a lot to answer for, and so does the governor of the state of Oklahoma. Did he direct these board members to lie about me?
I love the clip because he's just trying to cast blame everywhere he can because he so very much wants to be Donald Trump. He can never take any responsibility for anything. He's just got to blame everyone else. He's like, can you believe what my kids are reading in the newspaper? Listen, this is not the thing his kids should be embarrassed by. Everything Ryan Walters has done over the past couple of years, that's what they should be embarrassed by. This guy who wants to destroy whatever is left of Oklahoma's public school system, that's what their daddy will be remembered for, and it's not a good legacy. So listen, also, there's no way Ryan Walters' kids can read. You know that. This guy does not teach them how to read. If they read, they might read other books. And if they read other books, they might learn something. And that would go against everything Ryan Walters stands for. So anyway, he's just trying to paint himself as a martyr. And like, I wish there was a camera that panned to the media while he was doing that press conference, because there's no way anyone was buying that. I want to play one more clip for you from that same press conference. Here's another scene.
We have had our name cleared by both OMES and the sheriff's office. There is nothing scandalous that I was a part of whatsoever. And the lies will have consequences. Those individuals that tried to assassinate my character and print and publish things that are demonstrably false and provably false, we'll be hearing from us and all of Oklahomans very, very soon.
There's a couple things about that. First, he said he's going to like get revenge on everybody. Yeah, I'm sure you are, buddy. But the other thing he said is OMES, that's the Office of Management and Enterprise Services, and the sheriff, like the Oklahoma County Sheriff, he said they cleared him. They said they did the investigation because this was, I think, earlier this week, Monday or Tuesday. He said they cleared me. I'm good. So all of you are liars. Well, this is what the Oklahoman newspaper said about that. In a memo to Oklahoma legislators, the state OMES says it, quote, cannot determine definitively whether or not an incident took place. They basically looked at the TV. Oh, and what else? The OMES memo contains no language clearing Walters, though he insisted multiple times Tuesday that he had been cleared by the agency. So Ryan Walters is like, everyone cleared me. I did nothing wrong. And they're all like, well, we looked at your browser history or something and there's nothing there. Or we looked at the TV. The bottom line is, look, there's no recording of what happened. We can't prove you did it, but also you totally could have. We just don't know about that. That's what they basically have figured out. And also, I wish there was a way. I think there are some other hurdles they have to do to get access to Ryan Walters' computer. And you know, Ryan Walters, as soon as he got the chance, went to his browser history and deleted everything. The smart thing to do would have been to delete like 2 websites or something that he never should have gone to. But no, he deleted the whole thing. But they can't get access to the computer without some additional permissions. And now it might be too late to reconstruct what happened. I don't know how that works. But basically, all the groups that have looked at what he did and they looked at the computer and the TV, they're like, we can't really tell based on the limited access we were given to look stuff up. They also did say in the memo that a one-time passcode was required to access screencasting to the television, limiting the number of people with casting ability to the device, which means it's not like some random person was screencasting to a television. Ryan Walters must have typed in the code to pair up his computer with the TV. Like, all the signs point to, yeah, whatever was on Ryan Walters' computer is what you were seeing on the TV screen. But they can't prove it. But Ryan Walters is definitely denying it. I'm going to show you one more thing, which is that he did yet another thing, because I don't think that press conference worked out. So then he did something from his office, and the audio sucks, but this is actually what he sent out on social media.
What you've seen over the last 5 days is the nastiest political attack we've seen on an Oklahoma official. These are lies by board members, by a corrupt news media, and perpetuated by the teachers union to try to stop the will of Oklahoma voters and the Oklahoma parents. Already had 2 independent groups come in and prove there was no wrongdoing going on.
Again, he says they all cleared me. They did not. Non-Docs, the website that broke this story, they have followed up on this. And this is what they've said. The sheriff's office issued a statement to clear up any confusion after Walters implied its investigation was complete. The investigation is still in its infancy, so it would be inappropriate to discuss who we plan to speak with or any evidence we are seeking. You can, however, expect a thorough investigation with the results being made public at the conclusion, which is fine, but it sure as hell looks like they're not going to be, I don't know that they can uncover anything. I also enjoyed this update here. This is what Ryan Walters said. We have a cable box back there, and we have a got a gross accusation that has already been proven by OMES and the sheriff's office to be impossible to have happen. There's no devices connected to that cable TV. It's a cable TV set. We got board members that are lying and are crucifying my character to stop the work we are doing here for Oklahomans. That claim was contradicted by a report OMES sent to legislators Tuesday afternoon, one day after an agency employee, 3 deputy sheriffs, and a third-party vendor examined the TV at his office. So Walters is just, what's the word I'm looking for? He's struggling. He doesn't know how to get out of this. He's trying so hard to cast blame everywhere else, and he cannot figure out what to do. I do appreciate, hello. He did say one thing here. Oh, I'm sorry. After the Tuesday press conference, it seems that one of the Democrats in the legislature said this. Andy Fugate, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was not happy with everything Walters is saying. To summarize the superintendent's remarks, the governor is now woke and part of the cabal working to take Ryan Walters down. At the same time, Oklahoma's now ranked 50th in education. Yeah, I mean, that's the right response. Ryan Walters does not care about any of this. And I got one more thing to show you here, which is that there was a cybersecurity team that also investigated the matter. It's called Alias Cybersecurity. And according to non-docs as well, look at this. Alias Cybersecurity, they issued like a 32-page document. It includes an initial evaluation of the TV and connected devices, as well as a series of images and recommended next step for further investigation. However, Alias's report said the initial examination was significantly constrained owing to the TV's limited logging functionality. So they don't have access to the information they need. It's not like the TV you can go like Control Z and undo and figure out what happened there. So they also said one more thing right here. While the investigation confirmed the presence of various applications and devices capable of displaying streaming or stored media, unlike what Walters said, no definitive artifacts were identified that could conclusively verify whether specific content was or was not displayed on the television. And we can't figure out. We don't have any ability to figure that stuff out. That's where we are at right now. Also, one thing the investigation found is that the remote control batteries were not working, which might explain why Ryan Walters was like, I can't turn it off. I can't turn it off. Also, in their report, they said, I found this troubling. Look at the last bullet point. When the cable box was turned on, the channel was set to Newsmax. Like, that is so much worse than just saying there was adult content on there. You're the superintendent of public instruction, and you're watching the dumbest channel on television. Christ. Oh, isn't this fun? It would be hilarious to me if, of all the horrible things Ryan Walters has done to destroy public education and wage a war on public schools and public teachers, if this is the thing that finally brings him down, how funny would that be? Like, I always knew he enjoyed screwing over the people of Oklahoma. I just didn't think his downfall would involve watching that from the sidelines. I don't know. I'll pause there for a bit. What questions do we got? I live in Oklahoma, and I am loving seeing people from out of state roast him. Like I said earlier, this is such a beautiful story. It makes me so happy. And it makes me so happy to watch Ryan Walters squirm because he deserves it. Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation is now in the investigation. I've seen like murders that get less investigated than Ryan Walters streaming stuff on his office TV. But okay, great. Go look at everything. I hope they find some piece of evidence that Ryan Walters forgot to delete. I feel this way about every Bible thumper. They like to wave that book in public, act holy, and all the while know all the dirty parts. Yeah, and honestly, again, I don't care what he's watching. If I found out Ryan Walters is at home at night watching all this stuff, would it be hypocritical given everything he said? Yes. Would I care about it? Not really. I don't care what the man does in private, but it is telling, even on a different level here, when you see what all these right wing Republicans who wave the flag and raise a Bible, what are they doing when they are in power? It is dismantling science in our country. It is screwing over poor people, making sure hospitals shut down, you know, adding to our climate crisis. They are doing the worst possible things while pretending to do what God wants them to do. I mean, that's the bigger hypocrisy here, but whatever. I'll take Ryan Walters for now while I can. It's been reported that there was the TV, cable box, streaming device, antenna, DVD player, and his computer all connected to the TV. He's supposed to be working. As we all know, Ryan Walters doesn't actually have anything useful to do. So all he does, every press release is like, look, I found another Bible verse that we should teach kids. That's all he does in office. So it wouldn't surprise, I would be happier knowing all he does in office is watch Netflix all day. That would be so much better for everybody. If Donald Trump went golfing every single day, our country would be better off. Just don't do work. When you actually do shit, it's bad. So, like, just stop. Go watch all the porn you want, Ryan Walters. Stop screwing over the children. Compulsive liar, like his hero. I don't know if we're talking about Trump or God, but it works for both. Just like Taco claimed not being removed from office for his impeachment as I was totally exonerated. Yeah, I mean, just denial. They do it. All their surrogates do it on Fox too. Like, oh, the tariffs are great. Look how much money we made. It's like, no, that's how much money Americans are paying. Whatever. It's great. They just know they can lie and get away with it because they've also destroyed the media infrastructure that will ever call them out on this stuff. So they could say whatever they want. And a lot of ignorant people believe this shit, and that's the problem we're in right now. Oh, thank you for the donation. Stop by to say hi. Busy this week. Hope to see you next week. All right. Should we go to a different story? I'm sorry to say goodbye to that one. Den, I know you made a magical appearance in this live stream. If you could find the timestamp for that, send it to me and I'll get rid of it. All right, let me jump to a totally different story here. This is a disturbing story that I learned about through so many weird channels because it wasn't from a news source to me. But okay, let's suppose you are a child who goes to church with your family and the church says we're having a summer camp, a youth camp. It'll be fun. We're going canoeing and we'll be by a beach, and yes, Bible study and all that, but also fun summertime stuff. Would you be excited to go? Yeah, probably. Nothing weird about that necessarily. And this, I will show you right here. This is what was advertised by Leatherwood Baptist Church in Alabama. Earlier this summer, they promoted their youth camp. Even though they're in Alabama, they were going to go to Midfield, Texas, June 4th through the 7th. And you can see it's for grades 6 through 12. What are they going to do? Basketball, pickleball, swimming, and then worship and Bible study. But ooh, campfire. So, some fun stuff, and then the Bible. So that was the plan. The cost was $250, which, by the way, for the flight to Texas and the whole weekend, it's not that much money. And the church was offsetting the costs of this. So whatever. I can imagine a lot of kids were super excited to go here. And they also published a tentative schedule of what they were going to do those days. And all I would highlight here is you could see on day one, they arrive, they unpack, do some Bible stuff, whatever. Look at day 2 on Thursday on the bottom left of your screen here. At 10 o'clock, small group. From 11 to 5, service project. That's the bulk of the day. They're going to do something to help the community, and then Bible shit and whatever. And on day 3, on Friday, the big event, 12 to 5, beach. Cool. And then boring Bible stuff. And then they leave the last day. So again, sounds like it would be a fun time if you happen to be a member of that church. Okay, no biggie right there. Now, a week before they took off, the same student ministry for this church posted this on social media where they were like, it's no longer a youth camp. Now it's a mission trip, which is kind of different. And maybe you say that's a distinction without a difference. But okay, that's a little different than what we thought we were going to do. But all right. So now they're going to go on this trip. And here's the thing, because it was such a shift from what they originally said they were going to do, like the beach, the canoeing, the sports, there was one mother who goes to the church and her child was going on this trip. The mother's name is Courtney Wingo, and she asked the youth ministry's director, Mike Webb, she was like, are they like evangelizing to people when they are at this youth camp? And I think the answer was yes. And she's like, are they evangelizing to homeless people when they are there? Because that's a very different thing. And according to one website, she asked about that and she was concerned because they were going to Houston and it's considered a pretty violent city. And she said that Mike Webb told her that, look, the service project the kids are going to do involves serving food at a local food bank. And so the mother was like, oh, that sounds fine. So sure, my daughter can go on this trip. So they paid off the balance. Not only that, I should point this out. The mother didn't pay the balance. Her daughter was so excited about this trip, she took up all of her saved birthday money from maybe a couple years. It amounted to $250. The daughter paid for this trip out of her own pocket. So anyway, they go on this trip. The plan was to go work at a local food bank, which is perfectly commendable and a safe service project. I have no problem with that part of it. But apparently, right after they finish serving some food at the food bank, they get in the vans, presumably to go back to their base camp, and they were driven to a local tent city where a lot of unhoused people set up tents under a bridge and basically live there because they have nowhere else to go. And this was not on the agenda. Those kids, by the way, were as young as 9 years old. They do not know how to share the gospel. They don't have anything to talk about. Like, let me tell you about how my life used to be crappy and now it's amazing because I found God. They're 9. By and large, nothing bad has happened to these kids yet. So they don't know how to evangelize. They definitely don't know how to take safety precautions when talking to strangers who don't have homes. Because this isn't just, oh, I'm talking to a stranger at the mall. These are people who may have drug problems, health problems. There may be needles on the ground. They may have mental illness problems. They were not trained for any of this. And then they went there that first big day, and the second day they went back. This time they brought some food with them, I guess as a Christian bribe, because that's what they do. So, dumb. This is extremely dangerous and dumb. And I will say, the the youth ministries people, they posted on Facebook like, hey everyone, here's day 1 of our trip. I'm going to show this to you. Here's what they posted on day 1. Day 1 came and went. The students were able to explore the ranch, swim in the lake, enjoy an awesome meal. It looks like they're all traveling. Maybe it's the first time on a plane for some of them. They're all having a nice time. Like, fine. It sounds like everything went fine. But day 2, this is the picture they posted on Facebook. And I want you to just pause your screen if you're looking at this and just stare at this picture for a bit. This is what the church posted on Facebook. You have all the kids down front. A lot of them are white, which I'm just pointing out just because that's kind of relevant. And on the other side, after the metaphorical and literal gap between them, you have these targets for the Christians. They have all the people in the tents. Those are the people who need to be saved. Not with food, not with housing, not with money. They just need Jesus. Like, can there be a better picture to designate like white savior complex than this picture? Have you ever seen those stories or heard of those stories where like some Christian kid says, I'm going on a mission trip. I'm going to Africa for like a week, and I'm going to take some pictures of people of color to post on my social media, and I'm going to be there for a couple of days, and we're going to build like a church and then come back home, and I have done a good deed. It's like, you have not helped them with anything. Their lives are worse because you were there. That's what I mean by like the white savior complex. And what is going on here? It's all of these kids being taken to this tent city. It's so disturbing. Just the picture. I swear I stared at this for the longest time. These are people who actually need help, and they're just staring at them as if the kids have the solution, and the solution is Jesus. And I'm not blaming the kids. They were taken here. It's the adults in charge who decided this was a good idea. So the church posted that on Facebook. And by the way, I will show you their post because you should see this as well. There's the picture. I'm not making it up. It's like right there. But look at the thing they actually posted. We finished out the week seeing God do amazing things. And look at the last one on the list. 3 residents of Tent City made the decision to follow Jesus. Like, really? You're counting that as maybe just me hypothesizing here. Maybe it's because they wanted some of the food you had, and they were like, "What do you want me to say? Yeah, fine, I'll do it." Like, don't treat them as tally marks on a board somewhere. This is it's not just heartless, it's thoughtless. There are ways you can go and feed the homeless, and there are safe ways to do it. I don't know if you need permits for that sort of thing where they're at, but there are safe ways to do it. I should say they went there day 1 and they went back there day 2. My understanding from what I've read is there were about 75 kids, and they split them up into groups of 3 and 4 to go find a homeless person to convert. And there were 3 adults in charge of monitoring all of this. Meanwhile, there were another bunch of adults, maybe like 5, who stood back at a table with the food so they could give it to the people as they came to their table. But only 3 adults watching all 75 kids go in little groups to the tents and try to convert people. It's so freaking disturbing and stupid and dangerous. And these kids were just brainwashed into thinking spreading the gospel is going to override any of the actual concerns these people have. So all of this happens. They come back to their church in Alabama. And the day after they return, Mike Webb, the church's youth ministries director, he is speaking about the trip. And at this point, some of the parents know what happened. I'll get back to that mother I told you about in a second. But I want you to hear what Mike Webb told the church about what they did and how he decided that they were going to take a detour to this tent city. Listen to his words. It's disturbing.
When we went to Tent City, I'm not going to lie, when we first pulled up, we went to the food bank. When we left, I knew that we needed to go serve the homeless, not just in the food bank where it was safe. We needed to get out of our comfort zone and go. We left there, or as we were leaving, I Googled, where can I find the homeless population in Houston? First thing that pops up, Tent City. So that's where we're going. We drive over there in the vans. We pull in. Ain't no way I'm getting these kids out of this van. I will be fired. Mamas will be beating down my door. We're not getting out. We pulled to the end. We circled the cul-de-sac. We're pulling back out. Guys, I even tried to justify it. Guys, I just want you to see what's here. I want you to see how people live. Yeah, I need you to understand how fortunate you are. This is what it is, guys. All right, let's head back to the ranch. But let me just tell you, we get out. We walked through and we didn't have anything because we didn't know what we were doing. That was another piece of it. I didn't want to walk in there with 75 people into a homeless village and we ain't got anything to give, like we're just invading your space. You know what I mean? But we had that older couple that walked with us and we began talking. And I said, guys, we're coming back tomorrow. We're going to put together some food. We're going to put together some sandwiches. We're going to come back. We're going to feed and we're going to open doors. And everybody was, hearing this message, and we started promoting it amongst the people. We started telling them that was kind of our initial welcome. Hey, we're going to be back here tomorrow.
So that's, he said so many things there that were disturbing. One, he said this wasn't really on the agenda. He just did it on a whim. He said he did an on-the-spot Google search for like homeless people in Houston. That's how we figured out where to go. So no thought put into this whatsoever. And did you hear how he was like, I knew parents would be upset with me? And he definitely had that thought. What did he say? Ain't no way I'm getting these kids out of this van. I'll be fired. Mamas will be beating down my door. And then he's like, whatevs. And then he did it anyway. Just utterly stupid. So even if you think there's a good reason, I mean, they were helping the homeless. I mean, not really, but they thought they were helping the homeless, and that's a good cause. Maybe you think that. But to take that many children to a place where safety cannot be guaranteed, where precautions were clearly and admittedly ignored, that is what's disturbing here. It's just gross incompetence on the part of the church. They are lucky nothing bad happened to the kids, because it so very easily could have. But despite what he said, what he implied anyway, not everyone was happy with what he did. And let me go back to that mother, Courtney Wingo. This is what she told one outlet. This is on the first full day where they decided to go to that tent city. Later that day, back at the ranch where the group was staying, her daughter, Cameron, called her mom and reported what had happened. She said she was not given the choice to remain in the van with any of the leaders. Cameron was not given any evangelism training, Wingo said, nor were any safety instructions provided other than stay close. Jesus. On June 6th, the next day, many from the group returned to the tent city, but this time students were given the option to stay at the lodge. Cameron chose to stay behind. Webb admitted he pressured at least a few of the students to return to the homeless camp. What are these people doing? It is unbelievable. So that mother, Courtney, she ends up confronting the church's pastor, Phil Winningham, after she hears Mike Webb's sermon that I just played for you. And she's like, what the hell just happened? What did you do? I specifically asked if you were going to go evangelize to the homeless. You told me no. And that's exactly what you did. And the church is like, how about we just refund your $250? And they did. And they haven't apologized for anything. And then later on, and I want you to see this, Courtney Wingo then sent a formal letter. Like, she made sure they signed off on it when it was delivered, so she knew they got it. And check out what she wrote to the church's elders, like the ones in charge of this place. Cameron was completely unprepared emotionally, physically, and spiritually for what she encountered in the tent city. She feels hurt, misled, and betrayed. That is not the spiritual or emotional impact I was expecting from what was advertised as a church-sponsored youth event. This is not about whether ministry to the homeless is right or wrong. It is about the ethical, legal, and moral obligation to protect minors, communicate transparently with parents, and respect clearly stated boundaries. It is completely unacceptable for a youth pastor to disregard a parent's explicit instructions and expose children to high-risk environments without consent. And as we all know by now, there's nothing churches love more than ignoring consent. So she wrote that letter. She knows they saw it. But nothing else has happened. And then when the reason we know about any of this is because that mother, Courtney, she posted about this on Reddit, which is where it got the eyeballs of some reporter. But and I think Courtney finally, she posted on Reddit and they're like, you should contact the media about this. That's when it got written about. But look at this part. When I confronted the pastor after the sermon and told him he put my daughter in a dangerous situation, his response was, yes, I did. His justification was, God led me, which is honestly the worst thing a pastor can say when he puts your kid in danger. So Courtney added that she and her daughter no longer go to that church, which is great. As far as I know, they're still Christian, but they do not attend that Southern Baptist church. She actually said in a post, a little too cult-like for me and mine. So good on them. I'm glad they left. I'm sure if they're Christian, they could find a better church that doesn't treat children like pawns to use to go convert people. That church has said on social media their next plan is to take kids to Honduras to do actual evangelizing. But shortly after this story went viral a little bit, they pulled all of that advertising from their social media. Last time I checked, it's not there. But yeah, how's that for a disturbing story? Take your kids out of church. Uh, summer youth camps, Bible camps, not safe places to be. Okay, let's pause there. What questions do we have here? If they paid already, wouldn't that be false advertising? If they paid for like the $250 for a beach summer camp, you're saying, wouldn't that be false advertising? I feel like if you're giving money to the church and the church says, well, God spoke to us and said, do something different. Don't go to the beach, go to the tent city. I feel like a lot of parents are just not going to argue it. And kudos to one parent who did. I'm sure that none of the homeless are Christians. Yep, no homeless person has ever heard about Jesus. You know, some of those homeless people are like, oh my God, there are people here. Maybe they're going to help us. Jesus, another bunch of Bible thumpers. Like, these are the last people we need to be seeing right now. We need homes. Why don't you vote for someone who's going to make affordable public housing? Stop giving us a Bible. Cheaper than going to the zoo. You're saying taking the kids to the tent city. I believe it. I want an unhoused atheist to confront the kids with the problem of evil. You know, if there was an unhoused atheist in one of those tents who started arguing with the kids, they would have yanked the kids away and they're like, see, kids, this is why you don't actually help the homeless. Look what happens. This person doesn't believe in God. Look where he ended up. So you better believe. They would use it as like a threat of sorts for the kids. Meanwhile, their parents are probably voting for an administration that's openly hurting poor people and causing more people over time to become homeless. That's my point. You nailed it. Instead of giving them the Bible, all of the people at this church need to vote for people who are going to do something about affordable housing and trying to prevent homelessness as an epidemic. But none of them are going to do that. These are Southern Baptists in Alabama. I have very little hope that these people will ever do anything useful to actually help other people. They'll do the bare minimum, but they're not going to actually go for systemic change. All right, I'm jumping to a different story here. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Okay. Besides Ryan Walters, this may be the other story I heard the most about this week, and people wanted to make sure I covered it, so I'm going to do that. I want to show you this guy here. I actually don't know how to pronounce his name. It's like Scott Cooter. I'm not sure. Cooper, Kupor. But this is the guy who just got confirmed at the beginning of July to run the Trump administration's Office of Personnel Management. He's like the guy in charge of HR for like the federal government. And this week they issued a memo that is very disturbing. Now, this guy, Scott, he doesn't have the ability to change the law, but he can tell everyone, hey, everyone, we just want to let you know what the law says about what you can do at work. And it's not written for Christians, this memo, but with a bunch of links, it's very much designed to speak to Christians. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So here is the memo in question. It's a 5-page document that Scott sent to everybody. And let's look at the title here, Memorandum. What's the subject line? Protecting religious expression in the federal workplace. And so you have to read through like the first 2 pages of BS before we get to the point, which is that there are now a series of things that this memo is going to outline for what you can and cannot do in the federal workplace. And there's two I want to draw your attention to. Let's look at the first one right here. Display and use of items used for religious purposes or religious icons. Let's read through it, then we'll talk. Employees should be permitted to display and use items used for religious purposes or icons of a religiously significant nature, including, but not limited to, Bibles, artwork, jewelry, posters displaying religious messages, and other, what's that word, indicia? I've never seen that word, of religion, such as crosses, crucifixes, and mezuzahs on their desks, on their person, and in their assigned workspaces. So basically, if you have your cubicle at work and you're working for the government, guess what? You could totally decorate your cubicle with all the religious paraphernalia you want. You want a giant cross on your desk? You want it in the back of your little workspace? It's totally fine. That's what this is saying. In the past, you might say, maybe keep the divisive stuff at home because you're at work. But no, we want you to know all of that stuff is fine. And by the way, it wasn't illegal in the past. If you had a Bible on your desk, I don't think anyone would have noticed. And if you were wearing like a cross necklace or a yarmulke or a hijab, whatever, that's your religion, no one really cares. But what this memo is doing is saying, we want to clarify for everybody that basically anything goes when it comes to religion in your workspace. It's totally fine. You could put up whatever you want. And here's the thing. You can imagine where this can go wrong. What happens if a Christian puts up a sign or a Bible verse that implies that everyone who's not Christian is going to burn in hell for all of eternity? I mean, that's pretty much the whole Bible. But like, what if they put up a thing that says, convert or else? What happens if you put up a sign? I know some of you are thinking this already. What if there's a Satanist who works for the federal government, puts up a sign saying Satan loves you? Is that okay now, or is that not okay? If you put up the 7 fundamental tenets from the Satanic Temple, which are 7 things that are pretty much not controversial and tell you to be a nice person, but it does have the word satanic in it, is that going to be a problem? Because this memo says it won't be, but you could tell how this could get divisive very quickly. What happens if you put up, what happens if you have a couple different Christians at work who are super devout, and now they're in a contest to see who can like out-Jesusify the other? Someone puts up a small Bible verse by their desk. The other puts up a giant poster. The other puts up an even bigger cross. We see this. You think I'm joking, but every time there's like a giant cross put up in like Memphis or something, there's some other city in Mississippi that will spend $250,000 to raise a bigger cross because religion is nothing to them except like a dick measuring contest. So what happens when that battle occurs? What happens if non-traditional religions decide they want to get in on this? Because the same rules do not apply to Muslims, to Satanists, to atheists. And I'll have more to say about atheists in a second. Are people going to see that as controversial in a way that putting up a Bible verse is fine? Here's another concern. What happens if someone puts up a Bible verse that says, gay people deserve to be executed by the government? Because those verses exist. They're called the clobber verses. You can look those up online. A series of out-of-context Bible verses that people use to justify being bigots against LGBTQ people. Are people now allowed to put those things up? Like, there's so many ways this could go wrong. And then it gets even worse, because what happens if it's not just a random person at work putting up this religious stuff? What if it's your boss or your supervisor, whoever it is? What if they start putting religious stuff at their desk? Because if you want to talk to them about a raise or something of importance, are you going to feel pressure? Are you going to feel obligated to be like, haha, I love Jesus too? So am I getting that promotion? Like, there is a coercive element to all of this too. Even if that is explicitly forbidden, because that would be discriminatory, how do you know if it's your religious differences or your work performance, the merit of your work, that's leading to whatever happens then. Like, if you don't get a raise, is it because you're the wrong religion or because you don't have what it takes to get the promotion? And how are you going to be able to tell the difference? You could see these things happening. And obviously, this memo doesn't really concern any of that. But that rule that I just showed you is not the reason this memo made headlines this week. The reason this made headlines is, if I can find this, yeah, there was rule number 1 about the religious icons on your desk. But if I scroll down, here's the one, number 3, conversations between federal employees. Let's read through this because this is troubling. Employees may engage in conversations regarding religious topics with fellow employees, including attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views, provided that such efforts are not harassing in nature. Holy shit. Employees may also encourage their coworkers to participate in religious expressions of faith, such as prayer. To the same extent, they would be permitted to encourage coworkers participate in other personal activities. You want to go play pickleball this weekend? Sure. Hey, you want to go to church with me? Or else. The constitutional rights of supervisors to engage in such conversation should not be distinguished from non-supervisory employees by the nature of their supervisory roles. So yeah, your boss can try to tell you to come to church too. Your boss can now have religious arguments with you in the workplace. However, unwillingness to engage in such conversations may not be the basis of workplace discipline. So there's so much wrong with this. Oh my God. I'm going to scroll down. I'll come back to this in a second. In this memo, if you scroll down, that was page 3. If you scroll down to like page 5, they have an appendix that has examples of all this stuff. And in the section for conversations between federal employees, look at this example of what's okay. During a break, an employee may engage another in polite discussion of why his faith is correct and why the non-adherent should rethink his religious beliefs. However, if the non-adherent requests such attempts to stop, the employee should honor the request. There, did we clear it up for you all? Great. So, imagine the most annoying Christian you know. Now imagine that person works with you, because the Trump administration is now giving that idiot full license to use you for theological target practice. On the clock. Taxpayers are paying for you to maybe get converted. Now, the rule says harassment isn't permitted, sure, but like, what's the difference between someone trying to tell me I need Jesus in my life and someone saying, hey, buddy, can I talk to you about Jesus? I don't know, is that harassment? I would find that to be harassing. No, I don't want to talk to you about your stupid book club. Is what I said harassing? Like, who is in the wrong here? The person who constantly asks me if I want to hear about their favorite book, or me saying, no, I don't want to talk to you. Go away. I have work to do. I don't know how you keep track of that. There's no acceptable way for Christians to tell their colleagues they deserve to be tortured for all of eternity, but there's a way to escape that fate if they read your favorite book. There's no nice way to do that. It's always harassing. I don't care how nice and polite they sound when they're doing it. It is a form of harassment in the same way if I came up to a Christian and said, hey, you know how you believe in a bunch of bullshit? Listen, let me try to direct you to this book that tells you everything you believe is wrong. That thing you based your whole life around, yeah, it's just a waste of your time. If I did that in the workplace to a religious colleague, I should be in trouble because that's not acceptable. But apparently, if a Christian does it, it's totally fine as long as it's just mild harassment, not full-blown harassment. Like, at what point does it cross the line? And who gets to make the call to say something crossed the line? I don't know anymore. I imagine a lot of federal workers don't want anybody talking to them about their religious beliefs, along with other controversial topics. When I was reading comments about this particular memo, so many federal workers chimed in online saying things like, I worked in the federal government for 20 years, 30 years, and by and large, I did not know the religious beliefs of most of my colleagues. I did not know who they voted for because when we were at work, believe it or not, we had a job to do and we focused on it. And maybe if we got really close to each other outside of work, we like to hang out, maybe then you would know something about them, about their religious beliefs, political views, favorite TV shows, whatever. But when you're at work and you're working with hundreds of people, no, you can totally live your life, have your career in that space, and really not know what other people think about these very private matters. And yet this memo is like, they don't have to be private anymore. If you're a Christian, you can let everybody know about it. So there's a reason you don't have those conversations in the workplace, like religion, politics. The same reason you don't really want to do it at Thanksgiving dinner. A lot of times it's like, we are here to keep the peace. We don't want to have fights. We are here for a greater cause. Let's try to focus on that. But, and you would think that's especially true for the federal government, because you work alongside people who may have very different opinions from you. And rather than insert anything into those relationships to make it harder to work together, your job, if you're a boss of one of these spaces in the federal government, is to unify everybody under your common cause. Oh, we work at the EPA. It's our job to protect the environment. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what you do in your spare time. I don't care, Ryan Walters, what you like to watch on your computer. When you're here, we're here to do this sort of work. So let's focus on that. That's what it should be. So the rules, this memo doesn't stop workplace harassment. It like puts a jolt in it. It's going to make it even worse. It doesn't make life better for Christians, by the way, because they already have the right to be annoying. But it does make life a lot worse for everyone who's now going to be a target in those workspaces, because their Christian colleagues, some of them, are going to see them as nothing more than targets in need of saving. So instead of eliminating friction from the workplace, the Trump administration is now inserting friction, creating it where it doesn't need to be. And I want to stress, this memo does not change any laws, but it emphasizes different things to let everyone know you have permission to be a religious asshole to your colleagues at work. That's the disturbing thing. So the Washington Post had an article about this, and one of the things they pointed out is that all of this is completely unnecessary. In fact, there was a previous administration that told federal agencies you cannot suppress employees' private religious speech in the workplace, by and large. Guess which administration said that? I will show you. That was the Clinton administration in 1997. That's the rule that's still in play. That's what the memo said all those years ago. It said, yeah, if you want to talk about religion in the workplace, you're allowed to do it. You can't be punished for that. But what's the Trump administration doing? They're saying, hey, you know how it's okay to do that? Yeah, we're letting you know you can definitely do it. Wink, wink. So go for it. Try to convert everybody. Now, Republicans will likely argue this is not about elevating Christianity. Nothing in the memo is about Christianity. It applies equally to all beliefs. But we know this administration openly promotes Christianity above all other religions, and it pretends like anti-Christian bias is a very real problem. The Trump people even created an anti-Christian bias task force because you know who has it really hard in our country right now? Christians. Also white people. Like, there's no reason this memo should be seen as anything but a cover for white evangelicals who don't understand boundaries. I already mentioned this is going to be harder for Muslims and Satanists and people who belong to non-Christian religions. One, because they don't do this sort of evangelizing at work thing to begin with. But if they do, if they treat Christians the way Christians are now allowed to treat everybody else, I feel like they're going to get in trouble for it. And some of you are already thinking, what about malicious compliance, right? What if you're an atheist and you really want to play this same game? What if you start telling Christian colleagues they should stop believing in God? Well, this is where it gets interesting, because that same memo, let me show you one other thing here. what the memo says is we are just applying, look at this, federal employees enjoy broad religious expression rights in the workplace thanks to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, scroll down here for a second. Title VII defines religion to include all aspects of religious observance and practice as well as belief, not just practices that are mandated or prohibited by a tenet of the individual's faith. However, this is the key. Title VII does not cover all beliefs. For example, social, political, or economic philosophies and mere personal preferences are not religious beliefs within the meaning of the statute. So here's my question to you reading that. What is atheism? If, like me, you would argue atheism is not a religion, like off is not a TV channel, like bald is not a hair color. If atheism is not a religion, it's a personal philosophy. And according to this memo, if atheists do what Christians are now allowed to do, this memo does not protect atheists because you're not promoting your religion anymore. You're promoting your personal preference, and that's not protected. And you know the Trump administration is not going to help you in that case. So that's disturbing. I'll show you one more thing here, which is that a lot of church-state separation groups have already weighed in on this, but I want to show you what the Freedom from Religion Foundation said. These shocking changes essentially permit workplace evangelizing, but we're still allow supervisors to evangelize underlings and federal workers to proselytize the public they serve. This is the implementation of Christian nationalism in our federal government. Yeah, I agree. It's disturbing. It's especially disturbing that supervisors can do this stuff as well. I don't know if there's any recourse to fight this, including lawsuits. And I hate the idea that I want an atheist to challenge this or a Satanist. Yeah, why don't you try preaching to your colleagues in the federal workforce and see what happens? If you get in trouble, great, we can have a lawsuit. Like, I don't think it's fair to put that burden on those people and make them risk losing their jobs over this. But I feel like it's common sense to know this is a dumb idea. But this is the Trump administration, and it's this office, this particular office that sent out this memo, Scott Cooper of the Office of Personnel Management. He just got confirmed in early July. He's trying to make his mark, and the way everyone in the Trump administration tries to make their mark is by making Christians know, hey, I'm on your side, screw everybody else. So that's what this is. All right, I'll pause there for a bit. What questions we got here? Are they allowed to post hate speech? Like, will there be a fight between gay people or abominations that need to be put to death Bible verses versus no hate speech allowed? Great question. I don't know, because I'm sure there is a prohibition on, if someone said, death to these people, I'm pretty sure that that's not allowed. But if you post a Bible verse that is interpreted as like, oh, this is just God saying in an ideal world, you would not lie with a man as you lie with a woman or something, are they going to be able to get away with it? And like the correct answer is just don't do Bible verses in the office. Leave that shit at home. No one cares about it. No one wants to see it here. And it applies to everybody. No, this is a question we're going to find out very soon. You're going to see that story soon enough. I always tell people the test for religious freedom is, would you be okay if a Satanist did it? If the answer is no, then you can't do it either. And I've made this point as well, which is if Satanists, Muslims, if everyone had the same rights that Christians did, not on paper, but like in actual practice, Christians would be furious. Evangelical, right-wing Christians, conservative Christians, they would be furious because they treat neutrality as persecution. They believe they are better than everybody else, and the laws and all their rights should reflect that their beliefs are special, but everyone else's beliefs are second tier. You know what I mean? And so I get your point here. I wish this is the philosophy everyone adhered to, but they don't. because I feel this way about politics too. If Democrats did the shit that Republicans are doing right now, then Republicans would have a right to be as angry as they always are on Fox News all the time. And I think Dan Savage, the columnist, said this like, I wish Democrats would stop trying to take the high road. Democrats do not exist to serve as a good example for Republicans. No, if they're going to play dirty, you play dirty. If they're going to gerrymander, you gerrymander. And if Christians are going to do this, I wish Satanists and Muslims and other religions do this stuff too. I don't think it's fair to ask them to do that, because I think the non-Christians are the ones who would get in trouble for acting the way Christians do. Can employers still enforce the old way if they chose? I believe the memo is saying, hey, supervisors, this is the way it is now. So you can't have a blanket, no discussion about religion in the workplace. The memo says, no, you're all allowed to do it and they can't stop you. So does this mean I can start engaging them in conversations about deconverting? I already answered that. Come on, buddy. You know, it's a silly story, right? I know you don't want to believe way deep down. Like I said, I think if it's atheism you're promoting, this memo makes it clear we're not protecting that. I think they know that non-Christian religions are very much not in the habit of evangelizing in public. So they can totally pass a rule like this, pretend it's equal for everybody, with the full awareness that it's only conservative Christians who are going to take advantage of it. Is the federal government an at-will employer? Can they fire you and not give a legit reason? I feel like they have been doing that, but I actually don't know the answer to that. I feel like they have been firing everybody, though. Not at will, but they are treating us like at will anyway. Saw someone get fired in my office last week. Totally illegal. Yeah, who are you going to complain to? The Supreme Court? The federal government? I mean, I think Elie Mystal, the legal columnist, he wrote up his recap of the Supreme Court's last term. And he's like, why am I bothering to do this anyway? There is no rule of law anymore. If you're a Republican, you can get away with anything. And if you're not a Republican, then the rules don't apply to them. So we don't have a rule of law anymore. Why are we even playing this game? Sounds like they're trying to get ahead of the woke religion loophole too. I don't even know what we're referring to there. Atheism is a religion the way abstinence is a sexual position. There you go. Ryan Walters wouldn't know that, but there you go. All right, jump into a different story. Let me close a few of these tabs up before I move on. There we go. Much better. Yeah, give me 1 second here. I don't necessarily have a story about this next thing, but I figured I would just mention it. Did you all get a chance to see this show yet? It's on Amazon Prime. Shiny Happy People. They did season 1 a year ago, I believe, maybe 2 years ago, but it was about the Duggar family and the conservative Christian religion that their family belongs to and how disturbing it is. But season 2 just came out, I believe, a week ago, and it's 3 episodes. They're not terribly long. It was fantastic. There are no spoilers here. I mean, I'm going to talk about it, but I don't think you're getting any spoilers here. It was a really interesting take. And specifically what this season of Shiny Happy People focused on was something called Teen Mania. And if you're not familiar with it, you can go on Wikipedia right now and check it out. But Teen Mania Ministries. And in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, this was a huge thing. It was like the youth ministry for all of America. And it was founded by a guy named Ron Luce. The goal was to get kids to turn to Jesus and reject sex, drugs, alcohol. And like at its peak, this is an interesting article. This is from Christianity Today. Back at the time, 73,000 teens pledged responsibility what's the date on this? It's from June 14th, 1999. But look at the first paragraph. The same week that two teenagers murdered a dozen of their classmates in Littleton, Colorado, Columbine, 73,000 youth gathered in Pontiac, Michigan to declare they would live with honor, take responsibility for their actions, and respect authority. So the Columbine thing we'll get to in a bit, but at its peak, this ministry is drawing in tens of thousands of kids. I think that particular event represented over 3,000 church youth groups from across the country. They made a whole thing of it. They went to Michigan for this event. And what is it? It's like just a giant MAGA rally, except at the time it was all about Jesus, right? So it was a big deal. They called those events Acquire the Fire. Get the fire in your belly for Jesus. And look, if part of the goal here is we want kids to abstain from doing bad things that we consider sin, maybe that's okay. But the docuseries made really clear how problematic these events and the ministry were. For example, guess what they had in this ministry? Rampant abuse. Surprise! Like, that's according to former members. There was also a culture of fear that criticizing Teen Mania or Ron Luce meant turning your back on God. Like, you don't criticize the guy who basically is a prophet and has a direct line to Jesus. There's very much an us versus them mentality you get from these rallies that, Christians are inherently good and everyone who's not one of us is a bad, bad person who needs to be saved. Here's the thing that I did not know. They brought on interns. They called them interns. But one of the things a lot of these talking heads in the docuseries talked about is they would go to these rallies and they would look around. Who's running the cameras and the lights and the sound? It's all other kids, other teenagers. And isn't that a cool thing? Like, I want to be one of those kids who's running this show. And a lot of these people were like, Mom, Dad, I want to go work for this ministry, like right now over the summer. And they were called interns. And really, those interns ended up doing menial labor for Ron Luce. And guess what? They had to pay for the privilege to do it. They were paying like a tuition to go run the cameras for this guy. It was wild. Then there were like hardcore military style boot camps for members of the Teen Mania Honor Academy, rather. And really, this was a way to see, do you really have what it takes to be a part of this? And they ran it like you are a new cadet in the Army, where there's sleep deprivation. I think one person talked about rolling in vomit because they were so sick, but they also didn't want to give up because that would be like saying, I don't really have faith. I don't know how any of that brings kids closer to God, but there you go. I think one commentator said this in the series: how do you know you're in a cult if that's your normal? Because if you're surrounded by this, this is what you're supposed to do. And I think that statement cuts deeper when you go through all these 3 episodes. Do you remember there was that Christian missionary several years ago, John Allen Chow? He was the idiot who decided to go to India, get on a boat, go to an island where there were uncontacted indigenous tribes that lived on an island. And he was like, I will contact them. And you know what they need? The Bible. And then he found a way. He bribed some boat people and made them get close to the island where they're not allowed to go. And then the uncontacted tribe came out to see him, and then they shot him and killed him with bows and arrows. And he totally deserved it, because what the hell is he doing? He could have destroyed all of them with viruses. But anyway, you remember when you heard that story and you're like, that guy was clearly brainwashed to do something that irresponsible and that stupid. And when you watch this docuseries, if you weren't part of this growing up, and I was not a Christian growing up or anything, so this is not normal to me. But when you listen to the docuseries and you hear from people who grew up in this environment, it's like you can totally tell how easy it is to get that mindset that anything is okay as long as you're doing it to advance the kingdom, right? And you also find out, like, all these kids are being told, if not in the exact words, it's implied that lying or physically harming themselves for Jesus is a worthy way to walk through life. They interviewed the author Jeff Charlotte, who's written a lot about Christian nationalism. And one of the things he said is that kids are taught in this ministry that they are expendable, and that, and I'm quoting here, the most valuable thing you could ever do is die for your faith. And this brings us back to that Columbine mention from earlier, because Teen Mania was at the height of its popularity around the time Columbine happened. I will tell you, for me, that was like my sophomore year of high school. So, like, I was of the age when that's all we were talking about. And one of the stories that went viral after that shooting occurred is that someone, like, the story began getting passed around that there was a girl at Columbine, and the shooters said something like, "Do you believe in God?" And she said, "Yes." And then they killed her. And it turns out that story is a lie. But when the Teen Mania people, they were like, "Hey, that story's true, and that's what you should all aspire to do. Are you willing to die for your faith like that girl did, even though she didn't?" So this is very much drilled into their heads that not only do I have to believe in God, I have to be willing to die for my God. And if I told you this was a series, if this was going on, but it was about Islam and not Christianity, or it was about Satanism and not Christianity, I think by and large there would be a massive outcry. People would call it brainwashing. But because it's Christianity, it's treated as totally normal. One of the people they interviewed in the docu-series is April Ajoy, who is fantastic. She's a Christian, but she's very much critical of this type of Christianity. She grew up in this world. And if I could pull this up here for a second, one of the things she said is that when she was growing up and listening to people like Ron Luce, it was, the thinking was always very black and white. You know, there was no nuance to what he ever said. Here we go. Let me show you this really quick. She said, "You leave so fired up and you have this deep sense of purpose that there's no higher calling than for you to give up your entire life to spread the gospel, to save souls. Because you literally believe that if people do not have your beliefs, that they do not believe in Jesus the way you do, that they will die and go to hell." So that's from, that's not April. April's in here somewhere. But anyway, that's just, they had really good people talking throughout the series. I would also point out these beliefs are not unique to Ron Luce, to Teen Mania. This is a message that you hear in so many evangelical megachurches today. But when your brain is not fully formed, to be told that your only purpose in life is to play a part in this fictional, eternal war is so disturbing. And many of those victims are just now coming to terms with how fucked up their childhoods were because of men like Ron Luce. Obviously, all of this became political in the 2000s. Ron Luce impressed upon those children that if they were true Christians, they would not just believe in Jesus, they would take part in the culture wars. So they got to reject marriage equality. They got to oppose reproductive rights. No abortion, as if those things are required by the Christian God in order to achieve salvation. I asked April, who was in this docuseries, now that the series is out, now that she's had a chance to watch it, what did she think about it all? Like, was it accurate? How was it portrayed? She told me she really appreciated that aspect of it, how Teen Mania was tied into today's Christian nationalism, so that, she said, so that people can see more clearly how radicalized teens turn into radicalized adults. And one of the points she wanted to stress is that even if some people like her managed to escape the grasp of that ministry, a lot of people they know did not, have not. These are the people that show up on January 6th. One thing I also had not thought, I was like thinking to myself as I'm watching this series, I haven't heard much about Teen Mania in recent years, and that's because it basically came to an end about a decade ago. This is from a 2015 article from Religion News Service that highlighted how Teen Mania was shutting down. And look at this paragraph right here. Although Ron Luce would want us to believe that Teen Mania is closing because they accomplished the mission they set out for, the numbers tell a very different story. After years of declining revenue and waning influence, there was little demand for the product Teen Mania was putting out. Evangelical Christianity in America is changing, and young people are growing up in a different, more pluralistic society than those who were raised in the 80s and 90s. Oh, to go back in time and say something to the person who wrote this story. Like, oh, you wish we were getting more pluralistic. I hate to tell you. Anyway, the closing of Teen Mania is part of a shift in evangelical engagement in public life. Younger Christians no longer want to fight the culture wars that their parents did with a moral majority. They're more likely to be accepting of homosexuality than their parents were. And they recognize that America's religious pluralism requires sensitivity, not emotionally manipulative evangelistic tactics. That's adorable because a bunch of those people then voted for Donald Trump and are still very much MAGA cultists today. They just replaced their religion with a political religion, and they're still awful, awful human beings. Ugh. By the way, there were also legal problems with Teen Mania. Luce didn't show up for court dates. Teen Mania didn't pay some of its partners. It's a whole thing. One other thing, when I watched the series, something that stood out to me, it seems like all the biggest fears that Ron Luce had back in the day, he's always preaching sermons against like MTV and alcohol and premarital sex. Like, it all seems so damn quaint in light of what those same evangelical Christians have become today. Because, like, what's a bigger concern today? Kids who start vaping or conservative Christians who defend a race-baiting, bribe-loving, wildly ignorant sex predator? I don't know, I'll take the vaping any day. That it's really not that big of a deal, relatively speaking. And if you think the vaping is a sin, but that the latter, who cares? That's acceptable for the greater good. Maybe your religion is the problem here. So the series points out Teen Mania went from telling kids to reject mainstream media, mainstream culture, to telling them they need to take over that culture. And even though the ministry is no longer around, I would argue that in many ways they have actually succeeded at that, because right now they have more power than ever before. The people who would have run Teen Mania today are now the ones running the government. And they are doing all the worst things, but it affects all of us, not just the people in that conservative Christian bubble. I guess if there's any silver lining, it's that one thing this docuseries shows is that Teen Mania was partly defeated because a lot of the people saw the light and they realized how much abuse was happening, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and they spoke out against it. And if those people were able to see the light and come out and tell their stories and get that whole ministry to disappear over the course of several years, maybe there's hope that some of these MAGA cultists will snap out of it at some point. I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't have a ton of hope that they're finally going to see the light after 10 years of Trumpism. But like, if those kids can do it as adults now, maybe there's hope we could break this spell and defeat the legacy that this ministry left in its wake. All right, I'm going to pause there for now. Any questions here? The martyrdom complex is still huge. There are literal reels out there of people acting out being persecuted, unalived for their faith. I've seen some of that on TikTok. I've seen some people making fun of some of that on TikTok and Fundy Snark and all those subreddits and things like that. So it's very much alive. And it's, even if it's not Teen Mania, it's, like I said, it's happening in evangelical churches, whether they're doing hell houses during Halloween or Easter programs. And yeah, I mean, the manipulation is still very much there. I really hate our government. How many years later and they have not done crap about gun control? Yeah, not specifically about the story, but I agree. One thing I saw this week that made me happy a little bit is that after Zoran Mamdani won the New York City mayoral primary, I think 8,000 people went to the group Run for Something and signed up. They want to be elected officials, and they were like, I want to know what I can do to get elected to local office, not mayor, just like, let me get involved with city council, school board, something like that. More people signed up to say they wanted to get involved politically after they saw Mamdani and like smart, intelligent progressives do something big. And not just because current Democratic leaders, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, did nothing of value. Like they're not doing it because they just want to see the depressing, useless, older politicians get out of the way. They're doing it because they see younger ones doing something exciting. And they were like, I want to be on that train. So maybe as more people start getting involved locally and start getting elected to office, getting campaigns under their belt so they can eventually run for higher office, that's the way you start to see some of this stuff change. It was also kind of nice to see some of those right-wing nutcases like say, hey, maybe this Epstein thing is kind of a big deal and maybe Trump is handling it a wrong way, and like watching them back away from Trump a little bit. I don't think it'll last, but for a moment, it was nice to see. All right, jumping to another story here. Give me a second to pull this up. Okay. Want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Okay. This guy that I'm about to show you, this guy's name is Micah Beckwith. He is the lieutenant governor of Indiana. He wants desperately to look like Seth MacFarlane. But he's not like a candidate running for office. He's a Christian nationalist who got elected to lieutenant governor of Indiana. He has a long history of saying very disturbing things that probably play really well to the right-wing Christian nationalist podcasters he talks to, but they have no business being uttered when you're one of the top government officials in your state. Just to give you a couple quick examples, he said the LGBTQ movement is operating out of a demonic playbook. This is interesting too. He said this about the 3/5 compromise. And if you remember your history, what the 3/5 compromise was is that southern states could have more power because they could count their enslaved people as 3/5 of a human being, because they're not a full human being, but we'll give you some credit for them. And it gave southern states a little more power. What did Beckwith say about the 3/5 compromise? This is what he said in an interview. I said the 3/5 compromise was a good thing. It laid the foundation for America to get rid of the evils of slavery years down the road. Had we not done that, we would not have the Constitution, nor would we have freedom and liberty for all. What the hell is that last sentence? I don't even get that. But anyone who's like, you know what was great about slavery? We had it. And that helped us because it eventually taught us we should not have slavery. It's the dumbest argument ever. Beckwith says, yes, it was a good thing. That is exactly what the founders were doing. Our founders were laying the groundwork for liberty for all. I wanted to defend that. I'm not going to let people impugn the character of the institutions of America because of revisionist history. So, yay, 3/5 compromise, says the Republican lieutenant governor of Indiana. By the way, he also said his own election was a choice between godly boldness and the Jezebel spirit. He also argues, and I think I've said this previously, but he has argued that people who advocate for church-state separation are, quote, the LGBTQ community trying to support Hamas, unquote. What does that exactly mean? I don't know. It's word salad, just threw a bunch of buzzwords in, but that's this guy. But one of the things he has said on his campaign website is that one of his goals is teaching people the importance of protecting life at all stages. He's pro-life all the way through, right? But he has a very weird way of showing that when it comes to abortion. So recently, he appeared on a PBS program in Evansville, Indiana. Secular program. He was being interviewed. I'm assuming the hosts were like, if the lieutenant governor will sit down to talk to us, that's a get. So they wanted to talk to him. And they wanted to ask him about his pro-life stance. Specifically, Indiana made news, was it a year or two ago, when a 10-year-old victim of assault got pregnant and needed to escape from Indiana in order to get an abortion. because she couldn't get one safely in Indiana. And these hosts wanted to ask Micah Beckwith, do you agree with a fellow Republican who said this, that even child victims of sexual assault should be forced to carry a pregnancy to term? Because some Republicans were like, that child should not have been allowed to leave Indiana. That 10-year-old should have been forced to carry the baby. And they wanted to ask him, hey, do you agree with that? Or do you think, come on, there are some exceptions to that? And Beckwith was like, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, you guys, I am not heartless. Of course, I would not force someone like that to bear her assaulter's child. He said that is an exception I would make, but only on one condition. And I will play for you what he said so you can hear what that condition is.
Baby.
So I believe in the case of life, that life begins at conception. If you, there's horrible things that happen in life though. So when things like rape, especially rape of a child, happen, there needs to be severe consequences for the person who did that. I've always said that.
Like the person carrying the baby.
No,
that's a severe consequence.
What I've said, if we're going to allow one carve out, that would be the carve out where I would say, hey, this would be the carve out. If you're going to have an abortion in this consequence, you can do it here. However, this is my stipulation. I want that man who raped and caused that child now to be killed. I want that man to be charged for first-degree murder as well. And now the justice system will carry out justice on that man for ending an innocent life, bringing an innocent life into the world and then ending that life. Now there's justice, and I've always said I would be okay with that.
So he's pro-life and for the death penalty, which is somehow a rationalization that a bunch of anti-abortion nutcases always have that never makes any sense. I know the George Carlin line, preborn, you're fine, preschool, you're fucked. But like, yeah, that's very much what he said. So he would allow a child to not have to go through a forced pregnancy as long as someone dies. Because, if you're going to kill the fetus, you got to kill the guy who did this to her, because why have one death when you can have two? That's what God wants. Okay, so many things wrong with that fantasy scenario of his. One is that in Indiana, there are only certain situations when the death penalty can even apply. Specifically, like you have to basically be a serial killer in Indiana to even be considered for the death penalty. So as horrific as sexual assault is, that's not a crime for which the death penalty would apply. And when the hosts mentioned that to Dollar Store Seth MacFarlane, he brushed it off and he said, well, then we should change the law. He said, that's what I would want. Bring justice. I want justice. Also, think about the situation we are talking about. A child is sexually assaulted, is traumatized, and now has to give birth to her assaulter's baby. That's traumatic enough. Let's say she gets the abortion. She's been through a lot. And now what Micah Beckwith wants to do is put on her conscience, oh, by the way, the dude who did this to you, we're going to murder him as well. So thanks a lot, 10-year-old. Because of you, because you're part of this, we're going to kill that guy as well. Justice. Like, I imagine many victims of sexual assault have enough to deal with when terminating that pregnancy. The last thing they want weighing on their conscience is the knowledge that the only way they could get that abortion is if someone else has to be murdered in the process. And what happens if, I know you're only 10 years old in this scenario, but like if you oppose the death penalty, then what? What if you're a victim of sexual assault and you're underage, but you firmly believe the death penalty is corrupt and immoral? Then what? Then do you have to go through with the forced pregnancy? Like, his proposal gives them no solace whatsoever, since he's making them choose between complicity in state-sanctioned murder or forced birth against their will. That's where his morality is taking them. And by the way, the timelines for these two things are totally different. If you are in the situation where you have been impregnated and you need to get an abortion, we are talking about a matter of weeks or months when you need to get that taken care of. But a death penalty case can drag out for years and years. So what happens if, for example, the girl in this scenario has an abortion, but the death penalty case against the assailant falls apart? Then what? Then does the mother get punished somehow? I don't know, because Beckwith hasn't thought this through. None of these conservative Christians, they have these big grandiose plans for what they want to do. It all sounds great on paper because they only think through the headline and they never get through the nuance. It's what he wants is heartless, it's illogical, it's exactly what you would expect from a conservative Christian who's never thought about the implications of his stupid religious policies. And this is why you don't elect right-wing extremists to positions of power. Like, the people in their state are always worse off when wannabe theocrats are given free rein to control other people's lives. If there's any hope, though, for girls, women in Indiana, it's that, guess what? Thankfully, Illinois is right next door. And in our state, there are no oppressive anti-abortion laws. Cross the border, you can get over here, come get the health care you need here, because you're not getting it in Indiana under that guy. I will pause there. That was disturbing. Republicans are so fucking uneducated. It is staggering. And listen, I am not like cheerleading for Democrats either. I have so many problems with them. But yeah, by and large, Republicans, it's not even uneducated. This is the thing that bothers me. Like, Josh Hawley went to where? Like Harvard or Yale Law School. So many of these dudes in the Senate, in elected office, they are wealthy. They have very good educations on paper. And like, who's the senator from Louisiana? John Kennedy, the senator who puts on the foghorn leghorn accent. Super smart, but plays an idiot on TV because he knows it's what the base wants. They're not uneducated, the elected ones. They're very formally educated, but they just discard all of their education because they want to stay in power. For what? I don't know why. Because they just want to hurt as many people as possible before making money by doing whatever it is they want to do. Lobby, whatever. Charge for murder, but not rape. Yeah, I don't... That is another thing in Beckwith's scenario here. The person who's the sexual assaulter, they would get the death penalty, presumably for murder. But what about the charges for rape? That person would never go to jail, presumably, because they would be whisked right away to the electric chair or whatever. They don't have the drugs to do injections anymore. I don't know what they're doing in Indiana these days. So you can get an abortion only if the rapist is known. That's another scenario. Yeah, we're assuming, and I know, I don't know what the statistics are off the top of my head. A lot of the time, if you are sexually assaulted, the person who did it is someone you're familiar with. But sometimes you're not. And if you're a child and you're a victim of sexual assault, and if you don't know who did it to you, then what? Then they don't catch the person, then he can't be executed, then I guess you're forced to have the baby. That's Republican logic for you. There are so many people who are anti-abortion and pro-death penalty. I've struggled with this too. As a 10-year-old, her body isn't equipped to give birth. Her life is in jeopardy without aborting. But again, she's 10. Her life does not count if you're a Republican. Only the fetus's life counts. That's it. They don't care about 10-year-olds. All right. I'm going to jump. I got a couple more stories for you, and then I'll call it. Okay, this next one, I need to give you an update on a story I did a month or two ago, but this is a fascinating update. So you may recall in the state of Illinois, in central Illinois, there is Jefferson County, and in the courthouse a while back, they installed this 10 Commandments monument right inside the building. This was 6 feet tall. It was granite mostly. And at the very bottom, and I'm going to zoom in here, at the very bottom, it had a quotation from Proverbs. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to the evildoers. That's the thing in like italic, cursive. I don't know what font that is at the very bottom. Also, I hate the spacing on here. I know they're trying to line up commandments like 1 and 6 and 2 and 7. But when you get to 3 and 8, it just looks weird and there's a lot of empty space. I don't like that. So ugly monument, unnecessary monument. And also, why is it in the courthouse? And basically, I don't have to tell you why the commandments are bad. It's dumb. I did that in the last video. But what basically happened here is that the sheriff of the county decided to install this a while back. Like, and the reason he did it, I'll get into specifics in a second. The argument for putting it in the courthouse is that they believed it was perfectly fine. The sheriff, his name is Jeff Bullard, he said, remember that case where the high school football coach wanted to pray at midfield after games? That was the Kennedy versus Bremerton case. When the Supreme Court said it's totally fine that coach can pray out the field after games, they said that the Lemon test is dead. And what's the Lemon test? It's the test we use in courts to see if some law violates church-state separation. But the thing is, I don't have to get into the Lemon test right now. If they say that no longer applies, church-state separation still exists. And what this sheriff said is, well, the Lemon test is dead, so church-state separation is dead, so we can install this monument in the courthouse. That's not true. That's not how anything works, but that's what he did. So at the time, after they installed it, this is the sheriff, by the way. After this guy installed that monument inside the Capitol, the Freedom from Religion Foundation sent a letter to the county where they basically said, you can't do this thing that you foolishly think you can do. For example, even in the Kennedy case, they said church-state separation, if you want to have a religious monument on federal property, like a giant cross that you call a World War I memorial, if you want that on federal grounds, one of the ways you could do it is to say it's been there for like 100 years. It's tradition. So we can use that as an excuse. It's not just, even if it is promoting Christianity, it's been there for a while, it's tradition. Well, guess what? You just installed this Ten Commandments monument like yesterday. So it's not tradition. And also the Supreme Court has ruled on this specific issue in the past. Like they have said, if you have a Ten Commandments monument in your courthouse outside the state capitol, but it's surrounded by other monuments of secular things as part of like a collection of things about the legal history of the United States, that's okay. But if you have a standalone Ten Commandments monument at the courthouse, it's illegal. Well, this is a standalone Ten Commandments monument inside the courthouse, so it's illegal. The Supreme Court has not overturned that. So for all these reasons, you can't do this thing you're doing. It's also disturbing that the sheriff did this, and I explained this in the previous video. I won't go into it too much, but he knew this would be controversial, so he didn't tell people he was doing it. He didn't announce it. He installed it in the dead of night, basically. So for all these reasons, should not have been there. So the county never responded to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but in the months to follow, that sheriff spoke to lawyers who are like, my dude, we are not going to win this case. You've done everything wrong here. You can't have this monument inside the building. So what did he do? He paid to have this monument taken outside the courthouse. And also at the very bottom, he had a little thing installed so that you can't see the Bible verse. And he's like, see, now it's not promoting Christianity anymore, except all the places up here where it's promoting Christianity. So like this didn't make anything better. It doesn't matter if it's inside or outside. It's still on the courthouse property. And just because you covered up the Bible verse doesn't mean this thing isn't promoting Christianity. It 100% is. So this was dumb. These people are very dumb, but that's what they did. So last time I made a video about this, about a month ago, all these church-state separation groups had filed a lawsuit against the county. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, the ACLU of Illinois, the ACLU National. They all sued the Jefferson County Board of Commissioners in state court. And they basically sued the Board of Commissioners because they didn't stop this guy from doing it. And there were a lot of reasons they should have stopped him. They should have known what he was doing, how he was soliciting donations using public money. The fact that they didn't have any oversight over this is very disturbing. I went over all that in the past. Anyway, one of the things they pointed out is that the county commissioners, they asked their own lawyer. His name is Sean Featherston. They're like, hey, lawyer who works for us, are we allowed to say yes to this monument? And the lawyer told them, and I'm quoting from a news article, he consulted 4 lawyers, all of whom indicated that the monument raised serious legal concerns, with the best advice from them being, hope you're insured. So the lawyer was like, yeah, we're totally going to get sued over this, and you should not say yes to this monument. And then they did it anyway. They put up the monument. They voted to retain the monument on the courthouse lawn. And that's why the lawsuit was eventually filed. One of the board members even said he was willing to roll the dice because the board gets sued all the time. So that lawsuit was filed. That's the last time I talked about this. And now I got an update for you. And it's only been 2 months since they filed this lawsuit. And this is kind of amazing. So after the lawsuit was filed, that board of commissioners in Jefferson County, they met again. And they were like, what should we do about this lawsuit? And what happened is a couple things. First of all, it seems like their lawyer was like, what the hell are you people doing? But also, the county's insurance company told them they filed a claim with their insurance company saying, are you going to protect us because we're getting sued over this? And the insurers are like, yeah, no, we are not paying for your loss if you lose in court. You're on your own. We are not covering this because it's really stupid what you just did. And so the insurers were not going to cover it, and the lawsuit was filed. That means if a judge said this county is doing something illegal, which it would have done, it wasn't the insurers that would be paying out the money for legal fees. It would be the taxpayers, essentially. And that's not great news. And one of the things the board chair said is a lot of people said, who cares? Who cares if you lose? Keep fighting this. Well, look at what Clifford Lindemann, he is the chair of the board. He said this on a Facebook comment. We would need a minimum of $5 million to fight this in court. If we win, it will continue to move through the system until the Supreme Court. We don't want to deplete our finances for a fight we may not win. And this guy says, where's the $5 million coming from? If that's true, wouldn't the other side need that much money? How would they be able to raise the funds? And what the board chair says is, well, they have money. It's the ACLU. They win and force defendants to pay their lawyer fees. Our insurance company gave me that number. It is taxpayer dollars. He's basically acting like, yeah, the ACLU has way more money and they like to bully young towns, poor towns like ours. How dare those bullies go after us for doing something patently illegal? By the way, the sheriff also told the local newspaper, I did not realize in my planning that there was a loophole in the county's insurance policy. There's no loophole. Insurance companies famously deny claims all the time, but in this one case, they actually have a very good reason. Like, they know they're going to lose, and they also don't agree this is a good use of your time or money or whatever. He also said, this is Jeff Bullard, the sheriff, he said he was confident that we would prevail before the U.S. Supreme Court, but there is a possibility we would lose in the lower courts and that the Supreme Court could refuse to hear our case on appeal. So unless everything went right for you at the very end, you would lose a lot of money because you were going to lose in every lower court. So ultimately, given all that money, given all that time, given all those concerns, the Board of Commissioners voted 7-3 to take down the monument. And not only did they take it down, private funds paid for it to go to a local church. So now this monument is sitting outside the West Salem Trinity Church. No taxpayer money was used in the process. And that's fine. That's where it should have been from the very beginning. It's a religious monument. It should be at a religious facility, not inside or outside of a courthouse. Now, given that, there was still an open question, what happens to the lawsuit? Is it still going to be ongoing because they did make the mistake, or what? And this week, the reason I'm talking about this now is because of this thing I'm about to show you. In the Second Judicial Court, Circuit Court in Jefferson County, Illinois, look at number 3 and 4. On or around July 10th, the monument was relocated from the grounds of the Jefferson County Courthouse to West Salem Trinity Church. Number 4. The defendants hereby represent, this is the county says the monument will not return to county property. So they're not going to sneak around and bring it back to the courthouse. And so number 5, the parties have conferred and agree to bear their own costs in connection with this action. And what that means is both sides are saying, we'll tell the courts, just forget we ever filed this lawsuit. You don't owe us anything. Neither side owes the other anything. We'll go our separate ways. As far as the ACLU and FFRF are concerned, the county did what it should have done all along. So there's no reason to sue. And that's how it should have been. It shouldn't have taken a lawsuit for the county to do the right thing, but ultimately it was the lawsuit that forced the county to be like, oh no, we've done a wrong thing, and our lawyer says we're stupid, and our insurance company says we're stupid. Maybe we're stupid. Let's give it to the church. They'll love this. The Freedom from Religion Foundation and ACLU, they were happy. And I want to just show you their little victory lap here in their press release. We are happy that the county eventually complied with Illinois' church-state guarantees. It was an honor to help my fellow Illinoisans keep their local government secular. This is from FFRF's co-president. This action shows that Jefferson County understands it has no right to tell residents which gods to worship, how many gods to worship, or whether to worship any gods at all. What about the ACLU? It's easy to be silent and not speak up, but these brave residents stood up for constitutional values and demanded change. And also the ACLU, although county officials had no business prominently displaying biblical scripture at the seat of local government, we're glad that they've now fixed their constitutional error. So excellent. All around, take your victory lap. It's well-deserved. All of this could have been avoided if the sheriff or those board members just listened to the attorneys instead of their idiot Christian base who wanted this all along. Like, it took a lawsuit from secular groups to force these secular officials to do the right thing because nothing in their religion taught them how to be good at their jobs and be responsible public officials. Like, it's the right outcome. It just shouldn't have taken a lawsuit for this to happen. All right, what questions we got here? Okay, but they still spend government funds to build it, move it, etc. So I posted this in the previous video, but the way they raised funds, they raised a lot of private funds to do this, but some of the money came from a fund that is specifically designed for prisoners in their county to make phone calls out of prison. Like, there was a special fund designed to save money for prisoners to use. They took money from there for this thing. But also they got a lot of donations from churches and all that stuff. It's not necessarily the taxpayers funded it, but the sheriff was pulling money from all these places, and I don't really know if he's going to get in trouble for doing any of that. All right, I'm going to jump to one last story for you here. Maybe the most disturbing one of the bunch. But okay, I have talked about this guy too, but I think it's been like over a year since I've talked about him. This guy right here, his name is Jason Yates, Yates. And not that long ago, I will show you one of his websites here. Jason Yates was the CEO of My Faith Votes. And you can see from his bio here, their most recent role, I don't know, it is funny to me, Jason Yates uses the pronoun there, which seems unusual for him, but his most recent role was as the CEO of My Faith Votes, a national nonprofit organization focused on empowering people of faith to vote in every election. And of course, he wants them to vote for Republicans. That organization is nonpartisan, but you could see on their website, I will show you their website right here. Even on their website, when you scroll down, why do we exist? While secular progressives have actively sought to implement a counterfeit worldview at every level of government, Christians have remained quietly inside the walls of the church. As a result of apathy at the voting booth and in public life, we've suffered devastating moral decay, declining religious freedom, immoral national debt, and the erosion of traditional family values. And that is why Christians have elected the most immoral, non-family values guy ever, the guy who allegedly did all this stuff with Epstein. And they voted for Republicans who passed a bill to add like $4 trillion or something to the national debt. So success? I don't know. The group sucks. The mission sucks. I've been covering politics and religion for like, I don't know, 25 years now, and then following it for longer than that. Christians have never not been 100% involved in modern government. All right. So this idea that, oh, Christians, they're not involved in, no, they're involved too much. And that's the problem. Anyway, Mike Huckabee used to be this group's honorary national chairman before he became ambassador to Israel so he can hurt more Palestinian kids. So that's what this group was. That's what Jason Yates used to lead. And I'll show you one more thing about Jason Yates. Last July, about a year ago, he wrote this article for the right-wing Washington Times. If Christians don't act, who will? And what did he say? Let's look right here. He talked about how he took his son to a robotics competition at a secular university. And look at what he says here. We were immediately confronted with posters encouraging children to embrace strange new sexual horizons. They were handing out literature with an agenda to teach him to doubt the link between his mind and body, his self and his self-image. They offered Levi a rainbow button to wear, encouraging him to declare his gender preferences. Wasn't this supposed to be a robotics competition? Listen, what happened here is that this robotics competition took place at a local college. And when they went to the college, guess what? The robotics competition is not the only thing in town. So there were students handing out like pride merch. And they were like, what's your pronouns? And he could have said he, him, but apparently pronouns are too much for Christians to handle. So he got a rainbow pin or something, and the father went ballistic because this is depravity of the worst kind, right? So clearly, whenever Christians, conservative Christians, pretend that religion and morality are linked together, and anyone outside the overlap of that Venn diagram, if you exist outside of that overlap, you are immoral. You know how the story turns out, right? So here's the pop quiz for you. What did Jason Yates do? I will give you a second to think about that while I pull it up. And I did make a video about this last November, but it's been a while. So this is an article from last November. And let's see what our friend Jason Yates is up to. Let's see. Here we go. Jason Yates, the former CEO of My Faith Votes, has been charged with 8 felony counts of possession of very disturbing content. Don't make me say it. I don't want this demonetized. Each of the 8 charges carry a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison and a fine of $10,000. So this dude faced 80 years in prison. They note that Yates has a prior conviction and is a registered predatory offender. Oh, so this isn't even the first time he's been in trouble for this. So yeah, he would run a Christian organization dedicated to linking religion and morality. So that was disturbing. And by the way, again, I discussed this the last time I made a video about this in November, but basically the court documents for this, the reason he was charged with these crimes, it was a devastating story. And what I could make of it is that there was a relative who went to visit his home, and they were working out of this guy's home office, and they needed a way to store some files. Like they didn't have a zip drive on them, so they needed something. And so they found a portable hard drive in Yates's dresser. And so they plugged it into their computer, only to realize it had over 100 sexually explicit images of underage people. And after that person who saw that is like, oh my goodness, they contacted a trusted friend, and the friend is like, you should just turn that right over to the police. And that is what they did. And by the way, the victims we are talking about here are between the ages of 5 and 7. So anyway, at that time, This dude was forbidden from having any contact after he was charged with this. You can't have any contact with anyone under the age of 18. I assume that includes his daughter's lacrosse team, which he was a coach of. And at the time, Religion News Service was writing an article on this, and they got a statement from My Faith Votes, his group. And what they said is that in early August 2024, the My Faith Votes Board of Directors separated Jason Yates from My Faith Votes. Like, yeah, he left a while ago. Don't blame us. Don't include us in your article. We have nothing to do with this. They said nothing, by the way, about a Christian organization treating secular progressives as moral degenerates while also hiring a guy who was hoarding illicit content involving kids. They had nothing to say about that. By the way, that hearing that he had for this case after he was charged with the crime, that hearing occurred right before My Faith Votes held an online pre-election prayer event urging listeners to vote for candidates who support Christian values. So the group, having gotten rid of their leader, because he's in trouble, they were like, you know what we need in this country? Christian values. Don't anyone ask any questions. So the same people who were elevating a lying, racist sex predator for president were fresh off of being led by an alleged child sex predator. And why am I telling you all this now? Because there is news now, because this week, I believe it was this week, or at least in the month of July, Jason Yates finally entered his plea. He is pleading guilty to some of these charges. And this is the actual document. This goes on for a while, but I want to go down to, where did it go? This bit right here, number 21. Here's what he's doing. He promised, you remember he was charged with 8 counts of possession. He said, I'm going to plead guilty to counts 1 and 2, and all the rest will be dismissed. What else is important here? He will have supervised probation for up to 5 years, up to 240 days in jail, so less than 1 year. What else? He might have a psychosexual examination. He's not allowed to contact any females under the age of 14. He has to be a registered sex offender, and then he'll actually get sentenced in September. September 29th is his sentencing. So basically, by pleading guilty to 2 of the charges, the other 6 identical charges are going to be dismissed. That means he will spend probably less than a year in jail, no more. And also, by the way, I found this interesting. He would not be allowed to view any adult content online, and there would be software installed on his computer to make sure that doesn't happen. We're not talking about like children content. He's not allowed to watch any Ryan Walters favored content either. He also has to pay a bond of $100,000. So if he did not take that plea deal, this guy faced a prison sentence that could have been up to 10 years if they were all served concurrently. I want to point out our friend Jason Yates here. He is not a drag queen. He is not a trans person. He's just a cisgender, white, hetero Christian who votes for Republicans. I felt it's important to point that out. I also found this, last thing I'll mention, the day after this guy pled guilty, he pleaded guilty, My Faith Votes, it's still going. They put out their weekly news summary, and let's see what's in this summary. They're very mad. A bill positioned as the Equality Act is gradually moving its way through Congress and is designed to crush moral decency and religious freedom beneath the feet of the radical LGBTQ lobby. And this bill is being called a dangerous ambush of religious freedoms and may also allow pedophiles to become a protected class under the specific language used. All of that is bullshit. But also, the day after their former president pleaded guilty to some heinous crimes, his former organization is like, you know what, we need to stop LGBTQ people because those are the predators in our society. They haven't learned a damn thing from any of this. Like, I can't tell if that's a lack of self-awareness or a genuine desire to pretend like their former leader wasn't the guy he actually was, who's way more dangerous to kids than any of the LGBTQ people they're worried about. Like, I want to know at what point any of these Christian organizations will reckon with the fact that the biggest threats to children are often in positions of power within religious organizations, or the very people they're voting for, who's currently in trouble because he can't stop himself from talking about his best friend Jeffrey. Like, the people who are fighting for civil rights and social justice, or trying to read books to children in libraries, or the ones who are flying rainbow flags and hanging out rainbow pins, those are not the people you need to worry about. Your priest is way more suspicious, without knowing anything else, than like the person handing out a rainbow pin. Anyway, this Yates guy, he'll be sentenced on September 29th. Right now, I don't know what the maximum thing the judge can throw at him would be, but whatever it is, I hope that's what happens. Good riddance. All right, I'll stop there. Any last questions here? Otherwise, I think we've been going for a while. You know what, Hemant? You aren't any good at bedtime stories. Sorry, I only tell horror stories. You could call me Seth Andrews. I don't have the voice, but I like telling the horror stories. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Den for all of his help. This is so much better with him here. Remember, you can always subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. Please do that. It's free if you want it to be. And if you want to donate, you can go to patreon.com/Hemant. That works as well. I appreciate that. I should be back next Thursday. Hope to see you then. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.